All right. Next up, Oren, go ahead.
All right, thanks so much, everybody. I am extremely humbled to speak after Joseph as a avid bow tie wearer, and probably what I'm best known for as being the founder for Bow Tie Thursday. My hat's off to you. I am wearing a bow tie on my body, but I won't show you where it is at the moment. So I'm excited to talk to everyone tonight, and I want to thank Siobhan. It's a belt. It's not that big a deal. I'm excited to talk to you all about what we think, what I think, what my team at sqrrl thinks is a big challenge for big data, and that being issues around security and privacy, and those being a critical inhibitor to bring data together to make more sense from information, to drive greater decision making in enterprise. And what I'm really excited about is how this data revolution, or how the massive amounts of data that we're starting to think about can really help the public good and not just the enterprises. So I'll try to touch on that a little bit. So just a quick background on myself, because it's relevant to this talk and my company. So my team has been working before starting sqrrl in August at the National Security Agency, where we developed a very robust database that has some of these security features and design patterns. And I think it's probably important to be upfront about that, because we come from a world where security is paramount. But as we look out into the broader landscape, right, for people who are trying to grapple with their data problems or ask smarter questions, we see a lot of analogs to that, right? And so what I'd like to discuss are some of the strategies or some of the thoughts about how we can reshape data trust and application security and move that into the database and really create an unlocking feature, right? Not a secrecy feature for data. So, everybody's probably tired of hearing about how big data is so important and how it's really fascinating. For me, what's exciting about big data and what's troubling about these types of infographics is how static it is and how limited it really is on some level, because it fails to allow us as individuals and as companies and as enterprises to bring a lot of the questions that we want, which we think are very sensitive, right? Some of our personal relationships that could give deeper insights, some of the information that gives enterprises competitive advantage, and some of the information which people like the government and other larger institutions have been collecting for many years and holds a lot of the potential to advance where our society can go in the future. So I have sort of a question for the audience. How many people here either interact with data or are data computer scientists, data scientists, or want to use data to drive better decisions in whatever their work is? Okay, everyone, right? So this guy, you need to leave, right? So let me ask a sort of follow-on question, which is, how many people have either had a hard time getting a data set into an application that they're trying to develop for some sort of crowd labor, artificial intelligence, or have sort of run up against a red tape for, there's interesting data out here, but I can't buy it, or I'm only getting samples, or there's this minimization process. Is that sort of, everyone has faced that problem? Oh, not as many people, okay. Well, so I think for a long time, we've lived in a data poor environment because of some of these trust issues around data and what it means to properly protect it, properly ensure to consumers and to providers that your data will be safeguarded, and that when it's integrated with other interesting data sets, that there won't be any misharm to the individuals, right? And so what this has led to is a series of continued inferences, right? So even though enterprise tools like Hadoop and other advanced capabilities in the storage and processing layers are exploding, they still don't solve this problem for how do you move beyond inferences, right? And so there's this fundamental unbearable power of information and having more information that can't really be challenged, but yet it's constrained constantly by our inability to ask deeper questions and bring more data together, right? So the problem often kind of looks like this, where individual data sets have been fundamentally designed because security is embedded at the application layer, and users then become fragmented and become pushed to the side of these individual data silos, right? And so looking across these becomes both expensive, becomes very challenging, and basically it, fundamentally falls down, right? There have been some really interesting successes, though, that prove to us that having a tremendous amount of data and finding relationships in it can be really exciting. So, anybody here a Bravo watcher? Bravo TV? Okay, ladies. Okay, good. Okay. So, one of the really fascinating things about, did you? We're like, you and I, because I got the same like pink sock thing going on here too. You and I are going to be good friends, right? So one of the things that I'm always amazed by with Google is I can literally type 3 letters and it knows exactly the term I'm looking for. And that's sort of fascinating, right? And then one of the things that I'm most excited about is Google flu trends, where Google learned sort of as happenstance that when people develop flu symptoms, they often go to Google before they go to their doctor. And so by aggregating searches for cough and sneeze and a whole bunch of other terms and developing very simple, seemingly very simple analytic using their search indexes, they can predict the outbreak of the flu much faster than the Centers for Disease Control, right? And I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the sort of story about Target being able to predict female pregnancy, before this woman's parents were able to find it out. So what all these stories tell us, are you not familiar with that? Oh, okay. So what all these stories tell us is that there are relationships within this information that can be really powerful, but what these stories also tell us is that it's an unequal playing field, right? The Targets, the Walmarts, the Googles of the world have an unfair advantage to the rest of us, and that's generally codified by their terms of service agreements, right? And the fact that they're some of the few groups that get to collect without really the individuals having a lot of say over that information, but they have this sort of wealth of information that's not equal among all. And so there's an element to this talk which is about data rights, who should control the data, which if you look at what's happening in Europe, there's some very interesting challenges that groups like Target and Walmart and Facebook and others are facing. That's not the point that I'm talking here. What I'm suggesting is that the enterprises, by having data, carry with it the policies, right? That not having a terms of service that's blanket that allows you to simply do what you want with the data, but by being able to bring third-party data sets into an individual enterprise, you can achieve very similar results to what some of the exemplars in the field are doing. And you can create an environment that looks more like this, right? Which is you can take data from any source. You can codify the policies that keep the individual feature elements very sensitive, but often force the data to be separate. You can bring that data together, right? And through a data-centric approach, instead of an application approach to security or privacy or these data rights issues, you can give many more users, many more questions to the data while still gaining a lot of trust within your system or across the breadth of what you want to accomplish. And so this type of security, which can be extremely granular, right, to codify, in my example here, to be able to codify any policy, right, up to hundreds, if not millions of individual policies and individual users on a given data element, can create this unlocking feature, right? And so one of the things that we struggle with, and I'd be interested to talk with folks afterwards, is we also need a new vernacular to sort of describe this, right? Because secrecy and privacy, which are the typical terms, evoke, I think, a meaning that's not really consistent with what we're trying to accomplish here, which is an unlocking and trust-building exercise to the information, right? So, and from this, right, it also demands opportunities to explore this data and understand where the gaps are, right? So being able to combine multiple types of indexes and search capabilities with individual elements being held off needs users to have new ways to explore the data, new ways to visualize it as well, and be able to do a series of types of statistical or search type functionalities. So we recently participated in a study with the Cloud Security Alliance. There are many challenges coming in 2013. I've listed those up here, which we're beginning to address. I'd encourage people to get involved on this. And so lastly, what I wanted to say is that if you really think about some of these examples and some of the potential for the breadth of information that's available to us, this has tremendous opportunity not only to create individual commercial wealth, but to really create some public good as well. And so particularly in the areas of disease, like we see with Google Flu Trends, in crime prevention, in other world events, the unbearable sort of power and capabilities of data that's available to all of us can really be leveraged to unlock a tremendous amount of potential for us as we move forward across this revolution. Okay.
Thank you very much. So just to clarify, so Joseph's presentation was separate. Those three gentlemen are part of our theme of the night, which is a big data infrastructure company. So Oren, Drew, who's going to speak in a minute, and Eric are the three. So they're going to speak for 10 minutes each, and then sit down, and then all three will come back, and then we'll have a long time to ask questions.